Hello and welcome to Chats, a television podcast, Season 7, PrisonerChatz. My name is Magellan, and you hear the gentleman on this podcast? Isn't he handsome? Isn't he manly? I love him. Passionately, devotedly. I would do anything for him. Anything. I would even betray him to save him from his own folly.
Nope.
He loves me too. He sent me this locket. I will wear it always next to my heart. It's Alan.
Magellan, we write the short criticism after the episode, not during the episode. That was a lot, bud.
It's how I was programmed to feel about you.
Oh man, a woman stared me in the eye and showed me a picture of Alan in the computer, or in my case, showed me a picture of Magellan in the computer, and was like, "That's your boyfriend." And I was like, "No, he's just a guy." And they were like, "No, that's your boyfriend." And I was like, "Okay."
No, he's nothing. He's a loser. He's never accomplished anything in his life. He's so ugly.
Yeah, that was, oh boy. I do like the flattery. I appreciate the flattery, though. You know, they always say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but I'm pretty sure that flattery is the sincerest form of flattery.
Yeah, I had a couple directions that I could go. I could have said that when I look at you, I feel disgust or whatever Six says about number 2 in the second one. And I was like, let's just go super saccharine overload.
Saccharin, one might even say.
Yeah.
What's the etymology of the word saccharin? Hold on. Hello.
Figure it out, yeah.
Is this the time to look this up? No, it's not.
Yeah, I think so. I want to know what the prefix... What's the prefix we're working with there?
Of or like sugar, from the medieval Latin term saccharum, which means sugar. Oh. Okay. Oh, like sugar. Similar to sugar. Got it.
Cool.
Learning a lot about words here, folks. It's Prisoner Chats, and it's the Chats kids here to talk to you about your favorite cult classic television shows, like 1967's The Prisoner. And if you're listening here, then you already know that we watch 2 episodes of the show every week. And this week, we watched.
You always take this part from me.
Because I'm so used to doing it. Tell me what we watched.
Yeah, we watched episode 9, our episode 9, Checkmate, and our episode 10, Hammer into Anvil. This is, again, by the Amazon Prime order. That's how we're doing things, but there are a couple of orders floating out there. The first episode we watched was episode 9, Checkmate. It was written by Gerald. That's how you say that name.
Yes.
Gerald. It was written by Gerald Kelsey, directed by Don Chaffee. Originally aired November 24th, 1967. In this episode, Alan, what happened? That's the part that I'm used to saying.
Well, I'm so very glad you asked, because in this episode, inspired by a large chess game with people taking the place of the game pieces, number 6 formulates a new escape plan with some compatriots. Wow, that really buries the lead. That really, really buries the lead, doesn't it?
Does it? I feel like that is what the episode's about.
He has no compatriots in this episode.
He's got compatriots, but they're
he does.
That compatriotic, I guess.
Compatriotic has to be a word.
It's not. There's no way.
Okay. My thing, Magellan, I will say, to get into it, is I kind of expected the literal chessboard to factor into the episode more.
Yeah, I kind of thought that the chess analogy would extend past that 2-minute scene.
Well, I think it does. I just think that it's the analogy and the metaphor extends into through the episode, but it's just like the literal chessboard and the people running around it does not.
Yeah. Like you wanted to see it sort of update in real time or something as a kind of representation of the ebb and flow.
Right. There was one shot later where Angelo Muscat, which is what I'm calling the butler who walks around the island and works with number 2, because that's the actor who plays him, is Angelo Muscat. There's a part where he's marking down what's happening in the chess game on a piece of paper. Or no, not on a piece of paper, on an actual chessboard. Like he's holding a chessboard, I believe. Mm-hmm. And he's marking what's happening. And I kind of wanted him to keep doing that throughout the episode. And I think they only did it once. And I was like, no, that's the bit. It's we're doing chess.
Right.
But instead, we set up this chess metaphor to be everybody here thinks that they are in control of their own fate by doing stuff and going places, but really they are following rigidly defined scripts and plans, including everybody in the vicinity of number 6 who is wondering, like, am I in control? Am I looking for somebody else who's trying to break out, or am I the person breaking out? Or, all this stuff, all the mind games of it are all there. The mind games that are traditionally in chess.
Yeah, this episode, the idea that it's addressing here is... So first of all, I think this is something that I've kind of had questions about here and there, and this is an episode that, at least in most orders that I've seen, is supposed to happen pretty early.
Mm-hmm.
And it addresses something that I've kind of been wondering about, which is, are there actually other prisoners on the island, or is 6 just the only one?
Mm-hmm.
And at least in this episode, it seems to pretty definitively say, like, there are other prisoners. And they are going through the same sort of thing that 6 is going through, of how do you figure out who the prisoners are and who the keepers are, and who are the guards who are pretending to be prisoners and are actually guards, and what are the, like, cues and the tells that you can use to sort the two groups from each other. So that seems to be kind of like the main crux of what's going on here. And 6 is trying to figure out, like, okay, who's my team? Who can I sort of work with? But there really isn't any winning here. And I think the episode's called Checkmate because essentially the plot of it is that 6 devises a plan with the guy who becomes his buddy. What is his name or number? Do you know?
I was referring to him in my notes as Rook.
Rook.
He plays
good.
the Rook. The woman plays the Queen, and he plays Rook. So that's who they are.
So we'll call him Queen and Rook. So he devises a plan with Rook that seems to be working, and then the boat that they escaped to belongs to the village, and it turns out they thought that they had bested number 2, but really number 2 had played them against each other and scores the checkmate against them, and that's the episode. Like, it's pretty conventional, which is another reason why I think it belongs early, because it's really just like the most brute force way to get off of the island.
Yeah.
It's like, let's get a posse together and get on a boat and just get the heck out of here. But
yeah, and that, like, him forming allies thing definitely ties back into the whole chess metaphor. I was curious, like, this is the Prisoners, the kind of show where you just have to accept that, like, we're walking down the street, we're living our own life, and then, actually, my bad, sorry, you just walked into a, like, live action role playing chess game where we're all chess pieces, and these two guys just scream orders at us, and we all play it. And you're a part of it. And he's like, well, I guess it's a Tuesday. Here we go. I guess I'm the pawn.
Yeah.
And it's crucial that he is obviously pawn. He's playing the role of a pawn, but he's supposed to be a pawn that's breaking out and trying to become king or take the king.
Right. And get kinged on the other side of the... I mean, I guess you would never upgrade your pawn to a king, but like reach the other side of the board and become a stronger piece kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a lot of speakers barking orders back and forth. I know we made a Tubby Custard joke either last week or the week before that, but again, all of this talk of speakers and, like, being yelled at by these like big red speakers just made me think of Teletubbies. And then number 6 very quickly starts talking and flirting with number 4, aka the Queen. And it seems like they're just doing a rival again, because I was worried when this episode started, because you had told me that, like, it's fine, it's pretty good, and I was like, oh no, like, are we just doing another, like, he thinks the woman's working with him and she's actually betraying him? And I think it definitely diverts from that in some cool ways, but the beginning of the episode is mostly that stuff. But what kind of breaks up the first moments of this is the Rook, the man who plays the Rook, breaks the rules and finds a part where he could get check. And so instead of following the orders, he just jumps ahead and he is taken to a rehabilitation center where they do some nasty boy experiments on him.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, it's we're used to this now. Like, we've seen rehab centers in the show, and like, what does rehabilitation look like, and why do you do it? This one is specifically, I like that 6 is kind of bored by it, because he's like, they're like, oh, it's brilliant, it's Pavlovian. We're gonna put all these water bubblers in front of him, and only some of them work, and some of them electrocute him, and he's gonna want the one that we tell him to get. And he's like, yeah. And then it works. they get him to take the blue bubbler and it works and he says thank you. And they're like, we got him. And Six is like, wow, cool.
In college, I did a couple psych studies, and I was never shocked by a water cooler or anything, but it definitely reminded me of that sort of vibe of like, okay, this is like this sort of basic setup that's operating on what feels like pretty flimsy psycho science, and I think that's what Six is expressing there of like, okay, what are you guys doing here?
Yeah, and dehydrate him, great. That's awesome.
You think that broke him, that he drank from the thing that had the water in it? I don't think so. I was gonna say, with regard to what you were saying earlier about this being another arrival, or like thinking that it was, and then it diverts from that. I think what this episode adds to the equation of like, why can't number 6 work with somebody else or trust anybody else, is that largely the people who like betray him or sell him out are doing so for what they think are good reasons that are in pursuit of his best interest or are in pursuit of escape. So it's not as if like everyone is a malevolent spy in this one, right? It's
no,
not
they
like,
think
secretly
that they're doing the right thing. They think that they're being good villagers.
Right, they think they're doing the right thing. Well, and Brooke doesn't even think he's being a good villager. He thinks that he figures out that number 6 is a bad guy. And he's like, well, I can't just work with a bad guy. That's stupid. And then Queen is programmed, as we heard in our intro, to be in love with 6 and to want him to be safe and to stay. And so for her, she's completely convinced that like what she's doing is also in his best interest, because he loves her too in her mind. But of course, that's not the case.
Yeah, I want to get there, but because I do love that scene where she is hypnotized and like what they specifically tell her about number 6 and how that influences the episode. But before that, 6 kind of tails Rook, and he's like marking down things on his newspaper chess game, which got me thinking about like, could you make newspaper chess the way you do like a crossword puzzle? Is that doable? Because I think the idea is they set up a...
Or I've seen things like that where it's like a chess puzzle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like here's an in progress game, move pieces in a way that gets you into check or something. Like what's the maneuver? That seems cute. And instead of like actually playing the game, he's like writing Rook on the board, and he intercepts the guy and asks him about his thoughts on escape and like what all that stuff means. And Rook is pretty open to talking about his backstory. He reveals that he actually was an inventor, and he specifically invented a defense system and like wanted to give this amazing defense system to every nation in the world. And without even saying anything, 6 is like, yeah, so that's treason, right? Like they got mad at you for being treasonous. And he's like, yeah. Like, I guess I wanted to just be nice and like altruistic and fuck me, I guess, right? And he's like, yep. And so he's put in that's how he gets onto the village for being treasonous. I think that's fascinating. This like, you didn't take sides and thusly that's bad of you. And so now you have to take sides and be our pawn in a way. I mean, or our Rook even.
It seems to indicate that the village is run by the British government.
Or at least by a government.
Yeah.
But I know you're still running on your theory from Many Happy Returns that this must just be the UK government, right?
It's the Soviets, yeah. It's one of them.
Yeah. What if the island isn't even that far away and all of the stuff that we've seen of Cuts is just, he's in like England.
Yeah, it could be.
He's just like he's like goes 5 feet to the left and then all those like cool gypsy folk are just hanging out having a party. Yeah, so basically they talk about rebellion and stuff, and I really liked 6 having a little friend here. That's why it made me so sad when this didn't go well. Because again, it doesn't go badly because, Rook is betraying him. It goes badly because Rook he thinks he's doing the right thing. Or he thinks he thinks he's like, picking the right side.
Yeah, it's kind of refreshing to see 6 almost naive in this episode. This episode pairs really interestingly with the second one, with what's it called? I already forgot what it's called. With Hammer and Anvil.
Yeah.
Because both of them kind of deal with the like, who can you trust? How do you know like who's your prisoner or who's a prisoner or who's a guard or who's spying on you? But in those two episodes, Six is taking on very, very different roles, right? Because in Hammer and Anvil, we'll talk about it, but he's incredibly savvy and manipulative. And in this episode, he's like completely trusting, or as trusting as I've seen him anyway. And, he really thinks like, yeah, if we just call a boat and say that we're a crashing plane, they're going to pick us up. This guy, I've vetted him and he seems cool. Like I saw them torture him. Therefore he must be trying to escape and be legit. And yeah, it's sweet to be like, oh, Six. Oh, you
had a friend there.
Yeah, you really wanted to have a pal. But
like when they went to the beach together, I was like, wow, we're going to have beach buds? Oh, yay.
Yeah. When they're doing the transmission and Rook is in the background, like, yeah. Oh, you're doing a great job, buddy. Like if this was a buddy comedy, they'd be like slapping each other on the back and shaking each other's shoulders.
Exactly.
I'm picturing like Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn's The Prisoner. And they're like, wow, you really called the boat.
Baby, you're so money.
Yeah.
I bet you that's what the 2009 Prisoner really is.
I hope to God. I would so much rather see the Vince Vaughn Owen Wilson Prisoner remake than the one that we're going to watch.
Jim Caviezel Prisoner.
Yeah.
Is it Jim Caviezel? I believe it is.
It's Jimmy Cavs.
So it is God.
Yeah, it's J Money. Jimmy Cavs, J Money. Jim Caviezel, Jesus Christ, same initials. Do you think that's why?
Yes.
Oh goodness, you're kecking.
I'm kecking.
Yucky.
Big keck. Yeah. So he basically intercepts Rook, and they start becoming best friends. And he's like, "I'm going to show you how to identify other prisoners. Everybody here is either a prisoner or a guard. That's the way the world works. I'm going to take you around, kid, and show you the deal." And they talk to a painter and paints a house, and he's like, "That guy's probably one of us." And then they talk to the shop owner from the first episode. And he talks to him about some stuff, and he's like, that guy could be one of us. I don't really know. And before we get too deep into all the different like team stuff, we cut back to the Queen, who is being brainwashed to, like you said, to believe that Six loves her deeply and she loves him, and she's given a locket and told to never give up this locket. It felt cartoonish that they're like, okay, this is really important. Here's a transistor. We're gonna put it on you. You love this locket. Don't give it away. And then as soon as number 6 asks for it, he's like, can I get that? She's like, yeah. Fun. And yeah, there was like a lot of back and forth with this number 2. Not a very memorable number 2. He had a memorable face, but not a very memorable performance.
Yeah, probably the sexiest number 2, though.
Yeah, he's got that chest hair. He's got like a nice, almost like, he looks like he's wearing mascara. He's got like very strong eyes.
Yeah, I think he did have some makeup on.
I love that. Big fan of that.
Yeah.
And true King stuff is the fact that he has 3 colorful phones, not just the one curvy phone, but he's got like a yellow, blue, and red phone.
Well, in the second one, he has 3 colorful phones too, I think.
But one of them is the C phone, the best phone in the show. That's what I'm going to call it now.
Yeah.
Ring, 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 C phone.
I would love to, if there was a way to buy that prop, I would buy that prop.
I love it. I started thinking about it when I was watching the second one. He's talking on the phone, and I was like, what like decision goes through your head when you make that prop of like, I guess you're going for like a mod art style where like the whole thing about mod is everything is longer and stretchier than and more primary than it usually is, like non-traditional shapes. So I guess you're explicitly going for that, but. Yeah, it's a really cool decision. I wish more shows went for this kind of art style. It's underutilized these days.
Yeah, it's just, well, I mean, I think it's really hard for us to imagine someone who would be like, oh yeah, phones have one button. That's how phones work, is you pick them up and press the one phone button.
Right.
And then it does the phone.
Hey, look at that. Mod is, and then it's the phone. Yeah, it does the phone thing. Well, phones have one button now. Is that what you're saying? So like it's they don't need to be fancy now because
what do you mean phones have one button now?
They have the little home button.
But the phone has so many buttons. They're not buttons.
You mean like digital buttons? There's no physical buttons.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, imagine a phone being a device that's like, it just has the one function. You just press it and it's phone.
That's what my dad always wants. When he gets a new phone, he's like, "Where's the phone button?" I'm like, "Father, sir, it's right here." I was just looking up mod subculture, by the way, and I did confirm that it was very popular in the mid '60s in London and throughout Great Britain, eventually around the rest of the world. But it started like young London-based men in the '50s who were into modernism because they listened to modern jazz.
Mod was short for modernism.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Yeah. But anyways, so the phone is really good, and he's showing showing Rook all this cool stuff, and the woman's being hypnotized. Mm-hmm. What I kind of noticed about this episode, and what makes the like betrayal the more strong, is number 6 is kind of manipulating Rook the way that number 6 is manipulated a lot. Where he's like, you're one of us, like you're a prisoner and you work for me, and I'm gonna have you hack this thing for me, and like I want you, like he's kind of ordering him around more than you see number 6 usually do to other people that aren't women, actually. Not like in an awful way, but what it more meant was like at the end when Rook is like, "Oh, you were telling me all these things to do, and you were giving me all these instructions. I just took that to mean that you were trying to test me." And he's like, "No, I just wanted to leave the island. Needed your help."
Yeah, just trying to be your friend. Yeah, I was really struck by the reasoning that Rook gave for thinking that 6 was evil, which is like we're so assertive.
Exactly.
You had to be a bad guy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know, that tripped me out. Because it's sort of paradoxically like the thing that is going to get 6 out of there is the thing that makes it so that like he can't get out of there with anybody else.
Which is like his assertive, rebellious nature, you mean?
Yeah, like it inherently distances him from other people. I think this is something that if people read last week, the post that we wrote reflecting on the episodes last time, I was sort of thinking about like how this show kind of gets into the ambiguity and the contradictions of individuality, but sort of doesn't fully engage in that. And I think that this is a contradiction of individualism, that like if you are so strongly an individual, on the one hand, like that's a reason that 6 and Rook like each other, is that they recognize like, okay, you're like me, right? Like you're trying to get out of here. They say to each other, Rook says, "I'm on my side," and 6 says, "Aren't we all?" Which I think is
right.
a pretty good exchange.
We're all working for ourselves. Like, how does anyone work together if everyone's against if everyone is for themselves?
Right. And so that's like the thing that can bind them together, but it's also very easy for number 2 to drive a wedge between them, because when you're an individual, inherently it's not you're not as unified as you could be.
And I feel like that lens and how we think about that has evolved even in the like, how X number of episodes of The Prisoner that we've watched so far, where early on I would think like, oh wait, is this show like what is the nature of this individualism, and like, do we want this? Is it good? Like, what are our questions we're asking? And now we've come to accept that like we're not here, for example, asking, is Rook actually a prisoner? Like, it's not an interesting question worth asking anymore. It's more like, why does he in the end go back to number 2, and like what does he think himself? Like, what is his individuality, and what does that term even mean?
Yeah.
So the show kind of puts you in this headspace to think in a more nuanced way about like, what does being unique mean? What does being a rebel mean? It's not just the number 2 in Dance of the Dead asking if 6 is going to jump, and he says no, as if to say like, because you asked me, I don't want to do it. Like, he's not just saying no to say no. He's saying no for reasons that matter, and so is Rook in this case, right. Because he has opinions. And so, well, the other person who has opinions is the Queen, who is lounging on the beach after coming to 6's house, and they have a whole like little moment together. It's like a lot. Like she comes to his house and she's like, I love you, and I want to be with you, and he's like, I don't believe you. And she says, how can you doubt me? And she starts crying because she fully is committed to this freaking manipulation.
That really messed me up.
And he says, I'm waterproof, which is a fun way to say, like, tears don't affect me. And it's so heartbreaking because truly all the way fully inside of her brain, this guy is the one who matters to her. They make it so her heart rate like triples when he's around. Like, it's all there biologically, emotionally.
And you can tell that number 6 feels bad, right? Like, he's a nice guy.
Right, he's seeing through it, but he doesn't want to like just let her down harshly. Yeah,
so he's like blunt. There's a moment where she's like, oh, what's the line? Where she says, she says something. Oh, she says like, I think you don't love me anymore, like the way you're acting. And he says, I don't. But he's not mean about it. He's very matter of fact.
I don't.
I also, it was so sad and sweet when he he wakes up after a big nap, I guess. It's weird that he's waking up in the evening 10 minutes before curfew. But he wakes up and he's in his pajamas and he walks out and she's in her pajamas and she's like, hey. He's like, how did you get in here? And she's like, I walked through the front door. And they're having this back and forth. And then she's about to leave and she's like, may I see you again? And he says, oh, yes, I'm here all the time. That was pretty funny.
Which, if they were actually dating, would be a really like sexy thing to say. It's like, I'm already here, baby. But instead, it's just like, yeah, I mean, I'm not going. I literally cannot go anywhere.
I'm not going to be cruel to you, but I'm also not going to like play into this or be fooled by it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then this is the part that I really loved when she's on the beach and he's talking to her about the transistor necklace. And I love the way he finds it out because it's kind of like a Chekhov's locket or something. Where he has to find it. He has to pull it off her at some point. But it's not like some big dramatic moment. It's just that she's talking about like, oh, if you didn't like me, why did you give me this necklace? And he's like, I didn't. She's like, okay, that's weird because your photo's in it. So you're lying, right? He's like, hold on, can I see that? Can I get a look?
Let me see that.
Can you take a look? And she's like, yeah, here, take the whole necklace. Gives it to him. I really expected him to just throw it and be like, yeet, like into the ocean. But he's smart enough to know he's being watched this whole time. And my other note there was that in that scene when she comes back to his house and they're both like in robes or whatever, I thought the implication wasn't that she found the front door, but just that they had sex the previous night.
Me too, but it clearly became that it wasn't that.
Yeah, through the dialogue.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he meets up with Rook on the beach, and I really... Anime has the beach episodes. If the prisoner could have had a beach episode, it would have been just so great. Like 6 in some like nice swim trunks, having a good time, and like Rook is here, and get me a fun ensemble. We can't. It's not that kind of show at all. But I wish a girl can dream. And the guy is like playing with the locket and being like, "Oh, it's a transistor. We'll use it to call a boat or something. We'll use it to call like an emergency rescue thing." And there's a really great like 2 to 5 minute scene where as they're running around the beach getting this like transistor set up, number 2 sees him and he's like, wait, go get in there, zoom in. And like, it's just the slow, like him adjusting the camera going like, like, where is he? There he is. Okay, hold on. Zoom in. Okay, cool. Now hold it. It's like really, really drawn out, this process of like, we have to find 6 and we have to just look at him for a couple minutes because he's going to do something and we need to be able to see it. Like, I just adore the fact that the village has all of these cameras and all this technology, but it's still managed and like manipulated like a crane machine or something. So,
right.
So
yeah, I was
slow.
thinking with the locket, it felt sort of like an arcane way to keep tabs on him. I'm thinking about in the remake, what sort of like crazy high tech stuff can the village do? Because there's still a kind of grainy lo-fi, even though it's futuristic. It's obviously the futuristic of the 60s, so their phones have one button and their cameras are like and all that. There was one scene that I thought was telling that I actually watched a couple times, and I thought it'd be interesting to talk about. And it's when they're like doing tests on Six, and they're having him do a word association game. And I wrote down a couple of the associations that he makes. So one of them is the lady says desk, and he says work. Which
I saw her. I'm glad you caught these lines because it washed over me really fast.
There was another where she says hope and he says anchor, which is that's interesting because I think what he's saying is that like hope is sort of what anchors him. And then she's like, what? And he's like, oh, the Hope and Anchor was a pub I used to drink at.
It's a good pub name.
Yeah, it's a great pub name. And then the other ones I thought were good were she says return and he says game. And then she says love and he says game. So there's a lot of... Six is a very cynical, when it comes to the ladies, kind of guy.
I would imagine after all of it, well, okay, the timeline of the show is weird, but after being on the island for X number of days, months, whatever, he must be getting really exhausted by all of these women and exhausted by the idea of like being with someone.
Well, and it sounds like maybe he's carrying that from his spy life as well, his past.
Fascinatingly, I was reading about something in the second episode, and I learned that Patty McGee is a big, like little Easter egg I found out, or a big bit of trivia. He was offered the role of James Bond.
No way.
Yes, way. You know who he offered it to? He said, "No, please, I decline it because I want to do Secret Agent and I want to do The Prisoner." That's literally what he said.
Wow.
He offered it to his good friend Sean Connery.
No way.
Isn't that bananas?
No way.
We were so close to an alternate universe where we got like Patrick McGoohan as James Bond for a couple movies. I mean, this is a better timeline in that way. Because
I'd rather have
Connery
The Prisoner
James
than
fun.
James Bond, but I kind of would want both.
Yes, I would like to see that, what that would look like.
Yeah.
But yeah, that like impressed me. I was like, well, because that makes more sense that he has like this spy background and the actor has like done so much spy stuff too.
Yeah.
So basically the rest of the episode we have number two scanning all the security footage, and Six is like exchanging messages between all of the different spies. Things like tonight at moonset, took to rook to queen's pawn 6 check, which is really fun to say. It just has like a beautiful rook to queen's pawn 6 check, and he's like saying it over and over again. All the other people are hearing it. It's fun. It's just a fun little phrase. Yeah. And he is like going to the boat offshore, and he fights a bunch of sailors. Which there has to be an action scene in every episode, I guess. Maybe some sort of mandate. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it seems like we've started a whole rebellion. This is a moment where I'm like, wait, like. The prisoner is really conditioned.
Got a couple of yeasty lads together to rise up.
Yeasty lads?
Yeah, just yeasty bread boys.
Bread boys. Rise up, bread man.
Yeah.
And they like start a whole rebellion, and they like break into like this boat, and then they break into like number 2's office or something. And finally he's like, yeah, they don't work for you, Six. And he's like, what? And then he says, they get onto the boat, and they're talking about the Polotsker. That's the person on the radio who number 6 is trying to get in touch with. And he keeps giving him like obscure coordinates and not telling him exactly where he is, because 6 thinks like, you know, if I speak in code, then if somebody's intercepting this, they won't catch it. And then that's how I interpreted that, at least, because when he says all that stuff in code, they're like, oh, snap, we caught it. What did he say? And they're like, he didn't say anything useful. It's not. He didn't give us a real coordinate, not like useful coordinates, unless they were coded.
Yeah.
And on the boat is just number 2, who brought a spare like spinny chair with him. And he's like, yeah, number 6, like we were here all along. It's our boat and it's my men.
He's on the TV.
He's on the TV. I'm sorry. No, you're right.
Yeah.
Well,
but how does they shoot it? They shoot it where it looks like he's on the boat. Like
yes.
And then you see that he's on the TV.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah, Rook sold you out because he thought you were a bad guy. And then Six just beats up the sailors anyway, which is awesome. Like, and the music is like this Benny Hill, like dorky ass saxophone music underneath. It's really amusing.
It's very silly. Yeah, that's the best music for beating up sailors.
Yeah.
And then the rover is spawned in to just take him home, right?
Yeah, right.
I liked that. I like this moment of like, this boat is mine. I take away everyone on this boat is mine, and the rover's like, you're not going anywhere, buddy.
Right.
Yeah, it's an efficient episode. It gets its point across. This whole like, what is who are the guards and who are the? I think you got this quote from the AV Club review, but like, who are the guards and who are the guards pretending to be prisoners and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like who do you trust when you think that you have a confidant but they're actually not, and like the only person that number 6 can ultimately trust is himself, because every ally, no matter how he acquires them, is going to be in some way compromised. That's just a fact of the island.
Yeah,
the island,
right. And it's sort of bleak that the island can use both people's compliant natures and their like individual natures to turn them against each other. Mm-hmm. Like individualism is not some invincible cure to authoritarianism, because the authoritarian, tricks Rook into betraying Six, thinking that he's like doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So that it feels especially bleak, I think.
Right. But I think ultimately this episode should maybe be a little earlier in the season, because it's not...
Definitely, yeah. I agree with that.
It's not as action-y. Well, it is action-y, but it's not as like substantive as some of the other episodes we've even watched.
Yeah,
I'm not even talking about like Many Happy Returns even.
It's pretty conventional as far as The Prisoner goes.
The Prisoner has bounced back and forth so far between like deeply conventional and then very, very unconventional episodes, and I kind of wish that it had a more like linear arc with that stuff.
Yeah.
Where we start getting into the weirder and weirder ones. And I know that we're going to get there. Like, as you were saying, starting with Hammer into Anvil, we're out of the like first half of the season, no matter what order you're watching in. The rest of these are in the back half. At least that's how I understand it. But yeah. Do you have any stray notes about Checkmate?
I do have a few, actually. Okay. So, I mean, the costumes are really fun in the chess scene.
Super good. Yep.
I really enjoy... I wish there was more. It's fun in the second episode when he kind of just like hangs out in the village, because I love the costumes, I love the sets, I just love the way everything looks, and I like spending some time lingering in that environment. So that I was into that. I thought it was curious when Six was talking to Rook, and Rook was saying that like. You have to figure out the subtle behavioral differences between prisoners and guards, and it keeps your mind alert. And then Six is like, what use is that to them here? Which is an interesting question. Like, why would the village put him in this situation where he's hyper alert and hyper suspicious at all times? It feels like that kind of runs counter to their goals. And
right, when you want him to like get comfortable. Actually,
yeah, right. So it sort of feels like they're scaling up their methods in such a way as if this is sort of like a video game for Six, and he's gathering skills and getting better at noticing things that are off as time goes on. They're ramping the difficulty curve up for him in such a gentle way, and it's like, why are you doing that? Why don't you do something else?
Just make it hard. Do it the right. It's like Team Rocket or something, or like any show with like a recurring same villain doing the same types of plans where you're like, if you just did it right one time, you would win. You would just win.
Yeah. When Rook is being tortured, 2 is about to say something, and 6 says, "Don't tell me it hurts you more than it hurts him."
Don't do that.
That was pretty funny. So 2's response is just, in a society, one must learn to conform. 6, when he's like making pals with Rook, he says, "I'm a prisoner too." And then Rook says, "I've never been called that word before."
liked that.
Yeah.
Curious about that.
Yeah. And I think that's pretty much all I've got. Yeah. This is a pretty conventional episode with some interesting nuances thrown into the whole like individual initiative and can you escape with other people, or like do you have to do this alone kind of thing. I think that's worth reflecting on and carrying into other episodes, but as an episode itself, it's like not the most interesting one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's not. Yeah, I don't think there has been a genuinely bad episode of The Prisoner so far.
No, certainly not.
But there are just episodes where it kind of it washes over you, like the manipulation and the fun dialogue and the like set design and the costumes on and stuff. You're just like, oh man, this is a show that you can kind of like envelop yourself in for a little while and like take off.
Yeah.
My main comment was a question, which is why do we make such a big deal about putting the tracker on the Queen if we could have just put a tracker on Rook all along? Like, if we know that Rook is going to work for us at the end of the day, why didn't we just put the tracker on Rook, who is always with number 6? Because they make such a big deal about, like, we need the Queen to have the tracker because her heart rate will go up whenever she's near 6, and that's how we know when he's around. But it's like, just put a tracker on the Queen, on Rook. Even better, put a tracker on number 6 when he's not looking. You guys are smart. You can figure that out.
I think they didn't know that Rook was working with him at first, because Rook was playing that he had been made like docile by the conditioning, and they kept talking to him about like, are you taking your medications or whatever?
Right.
So maybe they didn't know. Yeah, that's my guess.
But that's all I got, baby. Barbo.
Okay, well, that does it for the first half of our episode. We're going to take a brief musical break, and then we'll be back to discuss Hammer into Anvil.
Hello and welcome back to Prisoner Chats. I'm still Alan and that's still Magellan. Hi.
Hello.
The second episode we watched this week was episode 10 in our watch order of The Prisoner, and that is Hammer into Anvil. This episode was written... Crack! Ka-ching! This episode was written by Roger Wattis. It was directed by Pat Jackson. It aired December 1st of 1967. And I'd like you to tell me, Magellan, what happened in Hammer into Anvil.
In this episode, number 6 vows revenge and goes after a sadistic number 2 after he drives a fellow village resident to her death.
No.
Alan, what do you think of Hammer into Anvil? Was it another conventional sort of...
No.
Typical... Oh, what are you saying?
Well, we can open up obviously by saying that this discussion will include a content warning for both discussion of self-harm as well as discussion for like violence, like severe self-harming violence. Kind of like in a really blunt way. And I do want to discuss it, but I just wanted to put that up top if anyone's uncomfortable with that stuff. That's about the first third of this episode. So if you want to skip ahead, give us like 10 minutes, honestly, because it's significant. But after a while, the episode stops talking about it, which is also something. Yeah, so number 73. By the way, I thought this episode was incredible. Besides how like severe that stuff was, I thought this is one of the funniest episodes of The Prisoner. It reminds us that the comedy can be used to really like to make a sharp point about like how information is exchanged, and it's just hilarious, which I always appreciate. I was legitimately like cracking up laughing multiple times on this one. But it doesn't start funny. It starts really fucked. We have our like really corny number 2, and we meet number 73, who is being interrogated about all sorts of things, like her husband, whether or not she actually loves him, whether or not he loves her, the fact that he cheated on her, and we see that her wrists are wrapped up in bandages, and they're asking why they're wrapped up. And we, the viewer, obviously to understand that she attempted to self-harm. We cut away from the hospital that she's in, and we hear her screaming. Number 6 hears her screaming, and for some reason he goes Superman mode, and he's like, I must save the woman.
He heard her from a distance and somehow knew like the exact room that it was coming from.
Yeah, we just zip him up there. She panics and, in panicking, leaps out of the hospital window to her death. And we see it. Like, we don't see the fall, but we see her on the ground, and it's like she's wearing this bright red dress, and it's a very stark image to open this episode on. It's like, okay, we have a number 2 that we hate, and we know why he's terrible, because he's really callous, and he only cares about getting what he wants and getting the information he wants. What do we do from there? And, like, it's frustrating in a way that this woman's, like, death and her, like, mental abuse is used mostly to just make this guy a bad guy. To show us like how awful he is. I think the show is sometimes it's quite progressive in its politics, but then sometimes very regressive in its treatment of women. Did you feel the same way, or was there more?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of two things, right? Like, I do think that a feminist reading of The Prisoner would be pretty unforgiving, because I really, barring a couple number 2s who were women, I can't really think of female characters who are who have significant agency in this show.
Yeah,
I don't know, here and there, but I do think that this particular scene, it does feel like she's used as a device to demonstrate his evil instead of to develop her as a character. At the same time, like, you have to show that this guy is, like, you have to communicate 2 things about him. You have to communicate that he is, like, both very cruel and very reckless, which are qualities that are not typical of a number 2. And so you need to shake the viewer out of, like, their understanding of what number 2s are all about, because we've seen so many number 2s who are, like, patient and methodical and only do as much as they need to do. And this guy, it seems like really everything's on the table, because then it makes it so that when he's talking to 6 in a later scene and he's got his cane and then he, like, flips off the top and it's a fucking sword and he's pointing it at 6's eyeballs, you're like, okay, this guy could actually stab him in the eyes. And so it's unfortunate, I think, that, like, this woman is used to illustrate that about him, but from the standpoint of, like, story efficiency, I can't think of a more effective way to tell me that this dude is a complete shitheel. You know what I mean? Right. So obviously I'm conflicted and torn about it. I think it also is, like, pretty callous towards issues of self-harm. It was shocking to me too, because, like, one of the first spoken lines is like, hey, why'd you hurt yourself like that?
Yeah.
So okay. Right. Guess we're doing this. Cool. But at the same time, like, that I think belongs in the show, because we have number 6 who's so certainly said to number 2 in Dance of the Dead that he wouldn't kill himself. But you have to imagine, if there really are a bunch of prisoners on this island, of course,
some of them are going to do this.
That's going to be how some of them respond to this torture and to this imprisonment, is by jumping out a window or by seeking to harm themselves. So I think my ultimate assessment of it is, like, I think that there was a way that the scene could have been executed better and could have been more, like, careful. But I do think that it was in some ways, like, the right scene to sort of get us into this episode and to shake us loose and to indicate to us that, like, this number 2 is particularly unhinged and dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing about this episode is it's so rapid fire with its like scenes and moments and, like, set pieces that we go so quickly past this moment and it's not lingered upon, and that's part of what rubbed me weirdly. Is like not even 20 minutes later, we're playing like fake Japanese bungee jumping duel game, and it's like
I know, right?
Like there's a lot going on, and they don't have time to like focus on this moment. But regardless, Six is invited to come to number two's office, and he like declines. Of course he does. And he's going through what looks like an apple grove or something. He's just going for a cool walk, and then a bunch of toughs and a golf cart come out and punch him in the face and take him. And we meet this number two, who is definitely one of the more menacing number twos, not just because of what he does at the beginning, but he is also threatening Six with a fencing saber. And he's hitting him with some Goethe quotes, talking about how one of them has to be the anvil and one has to be the hammer. And he says that Six is the anvil and he is the hammer. So he's basically like, I'm the one who will shape you. I'm the one who, hits you, all of that stuff. Six is like, I'm not going to judge, like, whatever you think, whatever works for you, but good luck. And then he gets a phone call, and we also establish that this number two is, again, very, very stressed out and worried about what his higher-ups think about him.
Yeah.
I think the self-conscious number twos have become some of my favorites, like this one and the one in A, B, and C, because like the presence of whoever's above them lingering in such a like horrifying way makes for really good dramatic tension, like realistic dramatic tension, like this fear that your boss is going to find out that you're not doing your best work and something like that.
Right.
But regardless, Six is going for a walk again. Yeah, a lot of times scenes just start with Six going for a walk. He's just hanging out. And he goes to a music store. And I loved this set, by the way. Like, this music store is gorgeous and really dense. And it has a sign in the door that says, "Music makes a quiet mind," which I like. And then on the inside, more good signage. Music begins where words leave off. Which is just... like, doesn't even have to tie into the theme of the episode, but just feels really good. And like, I would even like get a plaque that says that or something, like for a classroom. And so Sixes has some sort of plan up his sleeves, or maybe he does. We learn later that he super does, but he finds this like French record, and he's like, "Oh, give me every copy of that record. I'm gonna listen to all of them in your listening booth." Which at first I was like, haha, weird sci-fi show with a like listening booth and like a big sphere orb that you put your head in. But like, that's a thing. That's not fantastical. That used to be a thing. Into the 90s, it's like these little listening booths where you put the record on.
Did they look like that?
I think there are some that did look like that. Now it would be more like headphones, like a pair of headphones you just put on at the FYE. Sure.
It'd be like in frickin' that movie before. Which one did they do it in? They did it in the
High
second
Fidelity?
one? No, Before Sunset. Didn't they do that?
Probably. The second one. I don't remember Before Sunset that like specific stuff.
Or maybe it was in Before Sunrise. One of them they did like they went to a record store and did a whole thing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I actually thought this was a thing that was like gone for good nowadays, but when I went to France last summer, I went to the Fnac there, which is like their music and culture store, and they totally had one of these. And I was like, whoa, cool. I can just listen to stuff. Basically listens to this French record and listens to the different copies of it and times it. And as soon as you realize what's going on in this episode, the comedy really sets in, because number Six is not listening for anything.
Yeah, I was in the same boat as the music store owner of like, what could it be?
What like secret message, and gives them to number two, and number two has like a nice record player in his office, and he's like, there's no code. There's no secret here. Like, and he even like takes a copy of the tally-ho that says like increased surveillance on number 6, which I don't know how he can even go outside when it says stuff like that, because then it's just like, I can still go to stores. It's just that everyone's going to report everything that I do. And on the newspaper that he leaves behind, he circles the word security and writes a question mark over it, as if it's like
and that's like the grim thing that number 2 says, you can leave.
You can leave.
Take the albums, but leave the newspaper.
Leave the paper. Leave the cannoli.
I guess this didn't click for me until just now, but I guess it's hard to. It doesn't matter really, but it's kind of a fun thought exercise to wonder to what extent was Six making very deliberate, precise choices, and to what extent was he just doing weird stuff to fuck with number two?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking now that maybe what he was trying to do by listening to the albums is trying to show, like, look, I'm investigating every little detail and making sure things are consistent and making sure there's security and there are no secret messages getting in through the records or whatever.
Right.
And like, that's something that only a plant of the higher ups would do. Or he just was like, I got to go into the record store and do something really weird to get them to think I'm being suspicious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it what works is that it all feels believable. Like, there's no point where I'm just like, this is absurd. But until like the last 10 minutes where number two is like, and you're lying to me, and you're lying to me, and everyone's lying to me. Like, it's as soon as Six starts recruiting fake allies that I'm like, okay, this is a huge grift. Like, and it's amazing that number two is going to walk right into this. Like, it's like watching a brilliant Tom and Jerry episode, honestly.
Yeah.
Where you know he's going to win, but it's just funny.
It's sort of surprising that number two falls for it.
Over and over and over again.
Because it feels so transparently like, oh, he's trying to get under my skin. But when you're in this environment where literally everything is a lie and a manipulation, constantly, then it's cool to see Six realizing that and using that to his advantage. That now he is doing the sorts of things that the island or the village would do to him, to them, because like those things work on people. Whether you are the prisoner or whether you're one of the guards, people are just susceptible to gaslighting, driving them crazy, right?
Exactly.
So there was something there's almost like a twisted satisfaction that I got from seeing that happen to number two and see like, oh, it works. And this is actually a pretty significant victory that number six has, that he can sort of say like, look, you put me in this environment where everything's fake and everything's a lie. And that hurts me just as much that hurts you just as much as it hurts me.
Oh, and this is all like the satisfaction's augmented by the fact that we know that number two is a shitheel. Like at the beginning,
he's a terrible
Once we've set up that like this is one of the the worst, most evil number twos, then like watching him get his comeuppance is mostly hilarious and very satisfying. And then in the end, you still get just a bit of a twinge of like sadness that he is having his life ruined. But you know, at the end of the day, this has to happen. Like Six has to do.
Yeah, that he's like probably literally calling up the firing squad to
have him
kill him. Right. I can only assume that's what happens to number twos when they fail, is they get killed or shuffled off to some other project or
like lobotomized, right?
Yeah.
It's very dark. But yeah, basically the rest of the episode's just a bunch of moments like that. Like we have everybody who Six talks to, he just like yells random obscure stuff at them and they're like, huh, what? And he's like, thank you for your service, be seeing you. And then they call number two and they're like, yeah, so this guy just like yelled a bunch of stuff at me. And then number two goes, are you betraying me right now? And they're like, no, I literally just started working like yesterday. And he's like, okay, I don't believe you anyways. And
my two favorites were when Six calls the psychiatrist and he was like, hey, did you do that psychiatric report on number two? And the psychiatrist was like, what? And he's like, oh, I get it. Yeah, you don't want to talk about it on the phone. Wink.
That's smart, dude. You're good.
Okay. You're good at spying. I really got to get better at this. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
And any other number two would recognize that as an obvious, like, crank, like it's Crank Yankers or something.
Yeah.
Like it's a fucking puppet on the other end of the call. But this guy's like, no, this, you have to be lying to me.
Everyone's betraying me except number six. And Six talks. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and my other favorite one that I think I like even more is there's the guy who's like super loyal to number two.
Number 16, I think he is.
Yeah, whatever.
That guy's my favorite. He's my favorite side character in this episode.
Yeah, he's really good. Because he's so devoted to number two. And
he loves the man.
And number six just goes up to him and it's like, we're having really perfect weather today, don't you think? Isn't it lovely outside? Oh, I just love the weather. And he's like looking around all sneaky and shady. And the guy's like, what are you doing right now?
I was eating my croissant.
And he goes there too, and he's like, he came up to me and he was whispering. It was so weird. Like, it sounds like a lie because it's so odd.
And he's like, yeah, it does sound like a lie. You must be lying. Fuck you. You're fired. It's like, no. And he like breaks down and has his life ruined.
And they have what I think was my favorite fight scene in the show when he goes to number 6's house.
Oh, in the house, not the Kasho scene, but the scene in the house.
No, both of those are the top 2 fight scenes.
Okay, perfect.
There's the first one when is that a thing?
Dude, no. It's not a thing.
They made it up for this.
They made it up for the show.
It's perfect. It's what is it called?
Kasho, Kosho.
Okay, so they have this fight.
He's like number 6. I hate you, and he's like, yeah, I kind of hate you too. You want to fight about it? He's like, yes, and he's like, Kasho, yes. Cut to we're on a bunch of like jumping. What are they?
Trampolines.
Trampolines, and there's a wall. Trampolines. And there's like a wall, and there's a pool in the middle, and if one of us falls into the pool, they lose. And number 6 just kicks his ass.
Yeah, and we're like, they're totally dressed up in like big pillow suits.
It's bizarre.
It's so weird and good.
Because sometimes I watch The Prisoner, and I'm like, okay, this all has to like mean something in a way, right? There has to be like some sort of complicated reference or whatever. And then I watch this, and I'm like, did they just want to like do a
Yeah,
fun...
that was just goofy for the fuck of it. That was just delightful.
Looks like Nickelodeon Guts, or Gas, rather.
Yeah. It looks like a challenge on
Double Dare,
like Legend of the Temple or whatever.
Yeah, Legend of the Hidden Temple.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell what the rules were, other than there's like this elevated platform, and like just fall. If you fall into the water, you lose. But it looks kind of fun. I wanted to do it.
Yeah, it also looked like they were doing it wrong. Like, you're not supposed to go up into the wall.
Yeah,
those 2 dudes show up and give him the stink eye.
Right.
But the fight that was my favorite was when he shows up to 6's house.
Yeah.
And he's like, you ruined my life. I was such a loyal guy, and now I'm going to kill you. And then they have this fist fight set to just the most gorgeous harp and violin song. And it's almost like intimate. They're rolling around on the bed and all over the place. Like, it's kind of shot in the same way as if it's like the first wild sex scene between 2 characters in a romance movie, and they're like breaking all the furniture and stuff. I thought it was a lot of the fight scenes in the show are shot in a way where it's like, that's dorky, and I saw your fist go past the guy's face. But this one was like, I don't know, I thought it was really good.
What's fascinating is when I look up Kasho, it says Kasho appeared prominently in the episode It's Your Funeral, which is not this episode. This episode.
So we're going to see it again?
Yeah, but nobody mentions it in this episode. But we both saw it. You and I both saw it, right? This isn't fake. I'm not like, we didn't get a mixed up cut of the show.
That was real.
Okay. That's really weird. Every like article or piece or like video about this shows it as being in the next episode. I'm not going to worry about that too much. We'll figure that out. Yeah. But yeah, so he does the Kasho thing, and then the diegetic fight scene reminded me that even like John Wick invented nothing. Like, all of these cool like fight scenes set to beautiful music, The Prisoner was doing that like 50 years ago, guys. Like, it's a really fun and cool way to do a fight scene, is to score it primarily with this music that doesn't feel like intentionally clashes. That's so classic. Mm-hmm. And it's really well shot, and they like get all up in it, and they're knocking over furniture. That is. You know, I tease this show for kind of throwing in a fight scene every episode, but this one felt really great, especially because...
And it felt characterful, right?
Yes.
Because it's like this guy's last attempt to fight for what he believes in, and number 6 just like doesn't care.
Exactly. And so there is a couple more things. Number 6 buys a specific cuckoo clock from a store, and he's like, no, not that one. It has to be this one. And they're like, that's weird. Why'd you buy that one? And then he places it in front of a house and sets it up like a mousetrap, like with a pencil and a like piece of his sandwich that he just throws into it. and then closes it and places it in front of the house.
Number 2 assumes that it has to be a bomb.
He's like, it must be a bomb. It absolutely is a bomb.
Yeah.
He sent the bomb squad. And then the bird inside of it comes out, and he's like, like number 6 is like, perfect. And he like writes a message which has all these numbers. It's got like the again, Lost just pulling everything from the prisoner. Has like the Lost numbers, but except instead of them being the key to the universe, they're just a cipher for what was the phrase? What was the thing? What was the little poem or whatever the song that everything translates to?
It's I don't remember. It's some nursery rhyme.
Yeah, it's just a nursery rhyme. So all of his like ciphers, and they have like a whole guy being like, "Get the guns out!" and they shoot down this bird that he sends out. And then they pull it out, and he's like, "I'm gonna get my top code crackers on this. Here we go, guys. You have 5. You have 10
it's
minutes."
Like hickory dickory dock.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
So freaking funny.
Yeah. This episode is really, really hilarious.
Yeah.
I think it's the funniest one we've had in a little while.
I think so.
Yeah.
Again, it's so much of it is that number 2 just getting so like there are shots where his hair flies apart. I paid a lot of attention to the hair in this episode.
Oh my god, there's some shots of him like close up, caked in sweat, hair just flying every
in like
which
the shape
way.
of wings, like his hair just flying left and right. Yeah.
That actor's so good too.
Yeah.
He sells the whole range of, I mean, he's doing sort of like big scenery chewing angry guy and stressed guy, but I can't imagine any of the other people we've seen be number 2 pull off what this guy's doing.
This is Patrick Cargill, who, if you're into old British television shows, was the main character on Father Dear Father, which is a 1970s, 60s and 70s sitcom.
Was he the father?
He was the father.
Can you imagine seeing like freaking Jim Belushi? Freaking Tim Allen as his character.
Like in the American Prisoner remake, it's just
yeah.
That should be what it is, right? Is all the number 2s are like shitty comedian or like washed up comedians.
Awesome.
That'd be so good, right?
In the Vince Vaughn Owen Wilson version, where it's like Kevin James is number 2.
Oh, he's like, why isn't he working out for me?
He's like, I'm gonna break you guys.
It works
more
too
of a
because
physical Kevin James impression than a vocal Kevin James impression.
I felt it. I sensed it.
Yeah.
After 14 and 6 fight though, number 2 is like firing everybody. He fires 14, and then Angelo Muscat just comes in with like a plate of food, and he's like, "You're fired too." He's like, "Okay." He just turns around and closes the door like, "Peace, deuces." It's so good. Go back and watch that shot, folks. Just because this guy, this like fun butler dude, just comes in.
Well, he didn't leave though, right? He just was like, "I'm gonna keep doing my job.
I'm gonna keep doing this because you don't fire me, and you're gonna be killed in like a day." So
yeah,
but I'm not losing my paycheck over this. Whereas number 14 is like, "No, you fool!" He like gets this. Number 2 also smacks multiple people in the face. He smacks 14 in the face.
Yeah, he does.
Lots of slapping and smacking. But yeah, Angelo Muscat's just like, "I'm going back to work." And then we have the fight stuff, and finally number 6 goes to number 2's office, and he's like, "Hey, have you figured it out yet? Have you figured all my secret plots?" And he's like, "Yeah, you must be working for the people above." And like, I love, dude, that everybody is like, "Who do you work for, number 6? And like, "What are your secrets?" And number 2, when number 6 interrogates him, instantly is like, "You're working for XO2, right?" And it's like, wait, that's the name of the people? Like, wait. He just starts dropping like high up government conspiracy people names.
Yeah, number 6 is so transparently like, yes, right.
Of course, XO2. Yeah, I do work
XO4,
for them.
yes. And they would be mad at you.
"You big dummy. I can't believe you've done this." He says, "No, you're not 6. You're D6. He's like, "Yeah, D6. Sent here by the masters and all this crap. You sent those messages." And he's like, "Okay, well, let's say I was a plant. What did you do about me?" He's like, "I tried to stop you." And he's like, "No, you tried to interfere. That's not loyal." And his like lip is quivering in this scene like it's gonna fall off. It's so much.
Intense.
He's completely baked in sweat and like lip quivering to the point of like an earthquake. And number 6 is like, "Yeah, you failed your mission completely and utterly." And and they don't like failure here. So, and he goes, "You destroyed me." He goes, "No, you've destroyed yourself."
It's awesome. Oh, it's so good.
You were too afraid of your masters to realize what was happening right in front of you. A weak link in the chain of command waiting to be broken. Oh my God. And he's like, "No, just don't report me. Just let me keep my job." And he's like, "No, I won't." "You will." Here's the phone. Here's the big red phone. And we pull out, like, the camera is like now practically outside of the office. And number 2 just realizes his fate and calls up and says, "Yeah, hey guys, number 2 needs to be retired now." And then pause. And then he goes, "Yeah, I'm number 2. Yep."
Yeah, this is number 2.
"Yeah, that's me. Okay."
You might be wondering how I got here.
Number 2 needs to be
Oh,
replaced.
man.
Bye. "Yeah, that's me." And number 6 just walks out happily. Number 2 has like collapsed in his chair from anxiety and exhaustion. And yeah, I mean, sometimes the show can just have number 6 win. He's allowed to win sometimes.
So the title Hammer into Anvil comes from that initial interaction between 2 and 6.
Yep.
And there are a lot of lines that are fun in that exchange. When 2 is looking in 6's eyes and he sees light blue, he says, "Light blue, fearless, or are you?"
Yeah.
Every man has his breaking point, you know. And it's like, yeah, every man does have his breaking point, including
You.
number 2. Yeah. And then he asks 6 what's going on in there, what's going on up there in his brain, and 6 says disgust. And then he does this whole Hammer into Anvil speech, and I cracked up laughing almost at him ending that speech by saying, "I'm going to hammer you."
You stupid Anvil.
But I'm bringing this up because the AV Club review of this episode includes this George Orwell quote that's really compelling and I think relates to what's happening here from Politics in the English Language, where Orwell says, "In real life, it is always the anvil that breaks the hammer, never the other way around."
Because the anvil is solid and unmoving.
Right. And so eventually you're going to bust up your hammer and have to get a new hammer, right? So like actually being the hammer is not
it's
not
a flawed,
the more
it's
powerful
a flawed metaphor.
position. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I love this stuff, man. This, again, along with A, B, and C, are just, I adore these episodes where 6, like, pulls the curtain back and is the one in control. I think this one's a little bit more fun, though, because it takes A, B, and C most of the episode before 6 knows what's going on. And when he does, that's sort of like the twist. But what we understand is that actually very quickly, this is a grift entirely constructed by number 6 to spin number 2 down a rabbit hole until he is completely convinced that everybody's against him, and then just be like, "Yeah, now you're against yourself. Bye."
Yeah.
I love it. I truly think this is one of the better episodes.
Can
Overall,
you imagine the alternate universe where it's Sean Connery who does the prisoner? And he's like, "Number 2.
Number 2.
Yes, I'm gonna fight you." And then like all the ladies, he's like, "Oh, you're a bonny lass." And he falls for it every time. He's like, "Yes, let's smooch, baby. Oh, I've had to escape."
I am not a number. I am a man.
And because I'm a man,
I'm a free man.
Anyway,
What is it, 2008?
What'd you say?
I say, what is it, 2008? We're doing Sean Connery impressions like it's the early aughts.
Yeah. This is just a fun episode. I don't know. There's not like a kind of deep philosophical angle here. I think it's just exciting to see 6 start to use the tools of the village against the village and get some justice, you know?
Totally. And I want to, because we're going to try to do what we did for the last 2 episodes and do a little bit of writing again about these ones. And I'm going to be writing about Hammer into Anvil this week. And I think just as a little tease, a little yummy, is I want to write about the comedy of this episode and what is like humor to serve in The Prisoner? What role does it serve? That's the angle I'm thinking about right now. So I'll just let people consider that, and then we'll get you back to you on that. But yeah, it's a good one. It's a very good one, and I want to see more funny episodes and less like plotting sad ones, but the show works either way. Do you, Mr. Magellan, want to tell me, Mr. Allen, what we're watching next week on PrisonerChatz?
I would love to tell you that, Mr. Allen. Didn't like saying that. That felt strange. Just gonna say, Allen. How you doing?
Appreciate that. No, I like that.
Here, I'm opening up the summaries right now. So next week we are watching 2 more episodes of The Prisoner. We're watching episodes 11 and 12 on, at least on the Amazon Prime order. And those episodes are It's Your Funeral and A Change of Mind. It's Your Funeral. Number 6 hears of an assassination plot against number 2, but it's the new number 2 doing all the plotting against the retiring number 2.
Whoa.
That one sounds pretty fun.
Have we ever seen 2 number 2s in an episode?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so. Interesting. I think this one also has that Cujo game again.
That one, the fighting pool trampoline game?
I believe so.
Nice. And then A Change of Mind. After a brawl, number 6 is declared unmutual and is made to think he has undergone instant social treatment.
Oh.
That's one of those episodes where it's impossible to tell from the summary if it's going to be good, so it's probably going to be really good.
It's probably going to be very good.
Yeah.
And we're actually kind of...
I read ahead and I read a few more episode summaries, and it does get even wackier.
Yeah.
I couldn't have imagined, but there's still lots of places for us to go.
With what, 7 episodes to go, including those 2?
Yeah, at this point we're past the halfway point. I guess we were past it we passed it this time.
This time.
I don't know, math, but
not this time.
Not this time. But yeah, we're close. We're doing the second half now. Things are heating up.
Boy, oh boy. Well, Magellan.
Boy, oh boy.
I'm going to take it to the plug zone if that's Gucci with you, G.
I would love it.
God, I'm just very funny is the thing. No, hey guys, it's the Chats kids, and we're here to tell you that if you have any questions, comments, or emails, please send those over to chatspod@gmail.com, and that's chatzpod@gmail.com. We also have a Twitter @chatspod where we post links to the episodes every week, every Sunday. We also post Patreon stuff on there. And you can check out our Patreon, by the way, if you'd like to support us financially and help us keep the lights on and help us keep making cool content like PrisonerChatz and other things. Our Patreon is patreon.com/chatspod. And at just $3 a month, you get all of our bonus content. We have every month we do a poll where our patrons vote on what stuff they want us to cover. We do stuff like pilot chats where we watch pilots of TV shows. We do stuff like Chats Nights where we talk about whatever people want or whatever we want. Sometimes we just hang out. The latest Chats Nights from April was released recently and it's just us, playing music and talking about the stuff. It's very unguided.
Well, actually, the most recent one at the time that this comes out is a surprise 4th bonus episode, actually.
Oh, shoot. Yes.
Where we, this came out yesterday. We did a comment and nobody voted for it in the polls, so we couldn't do it as one of the actual voted for 3 episodes, but we really wanted to watch Dragon Ball Evolution, so we did with a friend of the pod, 6 from Scanline Media, and that went up yesterday, so that's on the Patreon. And this past month of April, we did also a Chats Nights about Animal Crossing. We piloted Veronica Mars, and then what you were starting to talk about, we also did a Chats Nights that was just like a hang session, which was really delightful to listen back to.
Yeah, great energy on that one. And I'm not even just like tooting our own horn. I think it was just a fun, relaxing podcast.
Yeah, so now's the time to get on the ground floor for May and steer us in a particular direction. We're starting to have to think about what is Chat's television podcast season 8 going to be. So, you might help us to pilot the show that's going to be our next show. Who knows?
Hell yeah. So that's all over again at patreon.com/chatspod. We would love your support if you can provide it. I know times are tough right now, but we like to think $3 a month is feasible if you like chats and you want more chats. But otherwise, this podcast is free. You can just listen to the pod. That's up to you.
Yeah. We also have started to. We're experimenting with this right now because The Prisoner's kind of a shorter show and lends itself to philosophizing and waxing poetical about it. We've been starting to do some post-pod reflections where Alan and I will each take one of the 2 episodes we watched and do a write-up about it that kind of either continues things we talked about or maybe explores an angle or a read or a comparison that wasn't discussed, and we're posting those. So as of recording this, what we're doing is we're putting those as text posts on Patreon, but they're open for anybody to read. You don't have to be a patron to read them. By now, it's possible that we've migrated those things to Medium or something like that. There will be a link in the show notes to get there.
Yep. But again, they will be on the Patreon right now, and that to emphasize, you don't have to be a patron to read those. That's just the place where we're putting our writing right now.
Yeah, sure. And if you have some thoughts on like if there's a way you think that could be formatted, or do you like it? Do you want to see it different? Yeah. We're sort of trying it out so that by the time we get to our next like big beefy sci-fi show, which seems to be what we do, we'll kind of have like an established rhythm and approach to how we do that sort of thing.
Yeah. Something else that's really fun that we do as we wrap up the podcast every week is instead of our own personal plugs, we do what are called Chatsums, where we recommend people check out things outside of the scope of chats every week. Each of us does at least one of these. And I'm curious, Mitchell, what is your Chatsum or Chatsums for this week?
So I'm kind of overwhelmed with Chatsums for this week, which is not typical for me. I'm going to do 2 Chatsums and 2 re-Chatsums.
Whoa.
Never done a re-Chatsum.
I like that. That's kinky.
Yeah, just because I want to sort of replug 2 podcasts that were really delightful this week for me. A while ago, I Chatsumed Freedom, the Earwolf show that is like a Stitcher Premium show that they then, once the season is done, they release the whole season, like a couple months later or something. And that's Scott Aukerman, Paul F. Tompkins, and Lauren Lapkus, just like hanging and vibing, and it's really fun. Because usually they only ever do podcasts in like character. That's changing, I think, lately, but that's what I initially knew them as. And just hearing them talk and like dip between doing bits and having like really genuine kind of existential conversations is pretty fun. So that's another plug for that. And then the other re-Chatsum is a week or 2 weeks ago. I Chatsumed Fake Doctors, Real Friends, which is Zach Braff and Donald Faison's Scrubs rewatch podcast. And now Alan and I are listening to it, and we're like actually rewatching Scrubs with them. So if you like TV rewatch podcasts, there's this
which
really,
I think you do.
Really
I have a feeling you do.
I think you might like them. So those are my re-Chatsums.
Okay.
Would you like to do yours and then I'll do my actual Chatsums?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but we'll do a little back and forth.
Yeah.
Mine are both brief. Basically, I'm getting into more seasonal stuff right now because I still enjoy and value the experience of watching shows week to week, and talking about them with other people and like going through without Game of Thrones in my life anymore. I like to have something else to gush about with people every Sunday. And right now, the 2 big ones that I'm watching week to week are the new HBO series Run, which is basically a straightforward rom-com series where these 2 ex-lovers have this plan that basically says when they used to date back in their 20s, they said, oh, if we aren't together anymore and one of us texts the other person the word run and the first person texts it back, then we drop whatever we're doing, we go to New York, we go to Grand Central Station, and we start our new lives together. And it's like this really wild out there concept that neither of them thinks they're going to commit to, and then the show starts with it happening, and it's like, what's going to happen now? What does your life turn into from there? What do you leave behind when you drop everything? And like, what's the process of that actually look like?
Yeah, that's cool.
Because I think a lot of people, fantasize about this idea, and so far Run seems very interested in being like, that's actually super stressful. And like, it might be worth it in some specific cases, but boy, howdy, are you putting a lot behind when you say that, especially in
There's
this
a
modern
reason
day.
that people don't ever do that.
Yeah. I mean, as soon as like the woman, the Merritt Wever's character, gets a call from her husband, that's like, "Where are you?" She's like, "Oh, I had a husband.
Oh my God.
I'm married."
Wow.
That's like the beginning. So, but yeah, the episode goes a lot of places, and I think people will enjoy keeping up with that. It's on HBO, which is frustrating, but I'm sure you can find that show if you're interested in it.
Yeah, well, now that people are at home, it's easier to get to the home box office.
Also, I know for a fact that HBO is doing a lot of series for free right now. Like The Sopranos, I think is like free on HBO because they figured that it's like to keep people staying at home. So I don't think Run is on there because it's brand spanking new. But yeah, and then the guy is Donald Gleason, and he's really cute and charming. So I like him. And then my second one, really briefly, is just a big honking shout out to my favorite anime of this season, which is the second season of Kaguya-sama Love is War, which I honestly may have chatted some super duper long ago. Now that I say it out loud, I'm like, did I say these words before? But basically, it's a anime about these two high school kids who are like the president and like the lead government person at their high school, male and female, and they have huge crushes on each other, but neither of them wants to be the one to say it, so they're trying to get the other person to say it, and it's like because they want to save face and they don't want to like embarrass themselves too much, so it's them and it's their friends who are all weird and funny and awkward, and it's very lovable. It's like really funny. Like I don't laugh at a lot of anime. It's rare. I think Nichijou was the last big anime that got me like consistently laughing because that's just a comedy. But Kaguya-sama like captures that feeling of being dumb and impulsive in high school and wishing that like big things would happen, but like why can't somebody else make it happen because I don't want to do it, and like if I do it, you know, all of the like mental gymnastics you're doing in your head around falling in love with someone. And it's really really charming and a good time. I recommend both seasons are really good, but the second season has started off so far incredibly strong. That's what I got. That's my chat sums. What about you?
Okay, so here are my
your real chat, your true chat sums.
So I don't know if I mentioned this on the pod or not, but I recently purchased used off of a friend of ours an Xbox that he no longer felt the need to own.
Yep.
And so I've been getting wet and wild in that thing, downloading games, and well, literally with Hydro Thunder, which I wasn't even thinking of, but Hydro Thunder, the Xbox 360 game, is on there, and that was a favorite of mine at the family fun center that I would always go to with my dad. So that's been special. But the two games that I was thinking of chat-simming was one of them. I've been doing the Xbox Game Pass thing, and one of the games on there is the Halo Master Chief Collection, which is just all the Halo games. And Halo Reach is still very good.
Yeah.
It's still really very good. I played it in high school, and I played it last night at 1 a.m, and I was like, yeah, I could just quit my job and play Headhunter forever.
Wow, you're playing multiplayer? Big boy.
Just the casual games. I'm not good at it.
No,
I get
God,
killed
no.
Really a lot. But I don't like shooters except if they're Star Wars or Halo, and then I like them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of Star Wars, the other game that I want to talk about is that I've been really getting into Jedi Fallen Order, which is the like Star Wars Dark Souls game. And let me tell you, if you want to play a Dark Souls game that is a slightly more handholdy, slightly more clunky, slightly worse level design, and you can get a double-bladed lightsaber and you can slash up stormtroopers and reflect their blaster bolts at them. And I just did this thing before we recorded where I landed on Kashyyyk and I was swimming through the water, and then you climb up the vines that are on like a mossy AT-AT, and you climb all the way to the cockpit, and then you kill the dudes in there, and you driving the AT-AT around, and it's fucking sick. It's so good.
It's a true joy to me hearing you call a game sick in the year of our Lord 2020. Yeah, I remember hearing good things about it. I always wanted to play it. I haven't played a lot of single player stuff recently. I'm bad, but that one looked really fun.
I mean, like objectively, as those sorts of games go, Dark Souls is better because Dark Souls is Dark Souls, but
sure, but double-bladed lightsaber though.
Right. Like this is the game that I dreamed Jedi Academy was when I first saw it in middle school or whatever. Like you really do get to do action, cool, fun stuff with the lightsaber, and it feels good.
I dig it. I super dig it.
Yeah. So
except for the part where the main character looks like Archie from Riverdale, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, he's kind of got a tweeny vibe, but he's doing a good job.
And you're doing a good job on this podcast.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
You too.
And thank you for joining me, and thank you to the listener for listening to this episode of Prisoner Chats. Be seeing you.
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 Oh, yes. Be seeing you. This is Sean Connery doing it. Be seeing you.